Good afternoon. I am Jessica Carroll, the interim program manager for Measure 110, and I will be assisting Blue Valentine with facilitation for today's meeting. The Oversight and Accountability Council welcomes and encourages community input. Members of the public are invited to submit public comments or get on our interested parties email list by emailing oha.measure110@odhsoha.oregon.gov. That email address and more information about the council can be found on the Measure 110 OAC website. For more information or support with community engagement, please contact me, Jessica Carroll, and we will drop my email in the chat. OAC members have asked that OHA and other staff who are present in the meeting space introduce themselves in the chat. Please share your role with the agency, and if you're a subject matter expert, your area of expertise. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Blue.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, we have a couple of votes in today's meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and pass over to Sydney to take attendance.
Thank you, Blue. All right, when I say your name, please say here. We appreciate it. Amy? Amy, you there? I'll come back to Amy. Blue?
I'm here.
Thanks, Amy. Blue?
Here.
Thanks, Blue. Carlos? Carlos, you there? Come back to Carlos. Caroline?
Here.
Hi, Caroline. Dharma?
Here.
Hi, Dharma. Henry?
Here.
Hi, Henry. Hubert? Hubert, I see you, but I can't hear you.
I'm here.
There you are. Hi, Hubert. Jackie?
Here.
Hi, Jackie.
Hey.
Keisha? Not here yet. Leticia?
I'm here.
Hi, Leticia. Melinda?
Here.
Hi, Melinda. Morgan?
Here.
Hi, Morgan. Nicole? Nicole yet. Onisha?
Here.
Hi, Onisha. Ron?
Ron's here.
Hi, Ron. Sabrina?
I am here.
Hi, Sabrina. Zeb?
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Zeb. And Tori?
Present.
Hi, Tori. All right, we have 16. Well, yes, go ahead. All good, go ahead.
Thanks, Sydney. All right, so on today's agenda, we have a vote to rescind a vote on budget methodology, and we also have a presentation from Lake County as well as a vote around their budget, and some updates from the legislative work group as well as from OHA. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Jessica.
Hi, all. Thank you so much, Blue. Hi, all. So the first thing I'm going to do, we are going to be voting on rescinding the vote on the budget methodology from 2/8/23. That would be February 8th, about a month ago. So can we pull up the slide, please? First thing we're going to do is call for conflicts of interest. Okay. We need to do this before the presentation, which is why we're doing it now. I ask all council members that would like to declare a conflict of interest to please raise your hand. When I call on you, declare your conflict of interest and whether it is an actual or potential. Okay. First, we have Zeb.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to declare a conflict, an actual conflict, since I'm a co-owner of Phoenix Wellness Center. I will be abstaining from this vote. Thank you.
All right, Zeb, thank you. And please turn off your camera and your microphone. Thank you. Onisha.
Show conflict of interest. Thank you.
Yeah, Onisha, is that an actual or potential? I'm sorry, we missed the first part.
Show conflict of interest. I mean, yeah. Did I
So
say actual?
actual, got it. Sorry, we kept missing the very beginning of what you were saying. No worries, no worries. Thank you. Please turn off your, thank you. Okay, Blue?
So I don't have a conflict, but I was advised by the Government Ethics Committee to just declare that I do work for Benton County Government Health Department, but they are not considered a business. So I just wanted to put it out there that it's not considered a conflict, but they did recommend that I just let folks know.
Thank you, Blue. Leticia?
Yeah, I have an actual conflict of interest with Addictions Recovery Center. So I'm employed by them. And then I guess it's either an actual or potential conflict with the Pathfinder Network is my husband is employed by them.
All right, thank you, Leticia. And it looks like you already have your camera off, so thank you. Next is Carlos.
So the agency that I work for, we don't receive Measure 110 funding. But there is, I guess, a potential just because of we work alongside Washington County, and but I'm not what is it called? How would I say it? We are going to be a part of the CAT program, and it's like a very there's a potential, but I'm not employed by Washington County, and I don't have any relatives or family members that are part of Washington County. So
it sounds like you just declared a potential conflict of interest, Carlos?
yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? I just want to make sure I'm not missing any hands. It doesn't look like I am. Okay, so
Wait, I'm sorry, I forgot. Raise my hand.
Okay. Hi, Jackie.
Hey, how are you doing? So I'm declaring a conflict of interest, an actual one, because we are funded. So I'll see you guys later. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Hubert, yes.
Yeah, I have an actual conflict of interest too, because I work for an organization that's being funded by Measure 110. So I'm gonna have to leave and come back.
Okay, stay in there. Just turn your camera off and your microphone, mute yourself, and you can be here for quorum. Yep. Can we pull up that slide just one more time, just real quick, so I can make another statement? Thank you. So thank you all. If we don't have any more conflicts, council members with actual conflicts of interest must refrain from participating in the discussion and will be asked to remain present with their cameras off and microphones muted. So we're going to go ahead and okay, so that's an actual. Carlos, do you want to go ahead and come off mute and state your?
Yes, before I forget again, because I am a part of Transcending Hope, Washington County, very part-time, but I am a part of Transcending Hope on that end of it. So I will turn off my camera and mute.
So you're declaring an actual. Okay, thank you. We will get that corrected in the record.
Because that's what happened last time.
Hey, it's fine. We're going to get it corrected in the record. And just go ahead and turn your camera off. All right, so we can go ahead and take this down. We'll bring the slide back up after somebody perhaps makes the motion. So can we bring the slide up with the motion? Sorry, I'll just give us 1 second. We have a lot of different slides to bring up, so we are working on it. Oh, this is not the slide. Okay, so essentially what we need to
The
do.
next slide was the slide, if you had just advanced it one.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
not.
that was just giving some background.
Perfect. All right, so we already called for the conflicts of interest. And we have a proposed motion here if somebody would like to make that motion or their own motion.
I move to rescind the vote taken by the OAC on February 8th, 2023 on the motion to adopt the budget allocation methodology.
I second the motion.
Perfect. So we have a motion from Dharma to rescind the vote
I'll
from
second it.
February 8th, 2023. We have a second from Amy. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. I'm going to go ahead and ask Sydney to call the vote. For the folks who declared actual conflicts of interest, we are not going to ask them to vote. So go ahead, Sydney.
Thank you, Jessica. Amy, how do you vote? Amy, you there?
Yes.
Thank you. Blue?
Yes.
Thank you. Carlos declared a conflict and will not be voting. Caroline?
Yes.
Thank you. Dharma?
Yes.
Thank you. Henry?
Yes.
Thank you. Hubert and Jackie also declared conflicts and will not be voting. Keisha has not yet arrived. Leticia also declared a conflict and will not be voting. Melinda, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Melinda. Morgan?
Yes.
Thank you. Nicole, sorry, I can't see my screen. I'm not sure if Nicole has arrived
We can
yet.
take that. We can take the slide down.
I don't see Nicole yet. Onisha declared a conflict. Sabrina, I'm sorry, Ron, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And Sabrina, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. So with 16 present, that passes with 9 yes votes. No need to go through the conflicts.
Fantastic.
Back to you guys.
Okay, and then I think next we're gonna have John Collins discuss the new grant extension strategy. So I'll turn it over to John.
Thanks, Blue. Hi, everyone. John Collins, Deputy Director for the Health Systems Division. I do believe we have a slide for this. Appreciate the vote to rescind our previous pathway. And at this point, what we're proposing to do is kind of take a step back and refine our pathway. And what we're proposing to do, given the significant decrease in funds that we have available for the burns and their components going into for that next 18 months of extension time. What we'd like to do is actually send out a survey to all the various burns partners to query them and find out from them based on their current budgetary status, including the fact that some of them might be a little bit behind in spending the money that they have right now. What are their lowest estimates in terms of keeping services going? We're not going to entertain any kind of proposals associated with one-time cost, capital costs for buildings and things such as that. But we'd like to hear back from the actual service providers of the burns, where they feel like they stand and what they would need to continue services for an additional 18 months beyond the current grant period. And based on that information, we believe that we'd have a better idea about which path is the best one forward for us. We're going to be asking them to go ahead and estimate and balance things out at a 36-month period, which is what the total grant period would be once the extension's in place, and see where things land. Well, we're definitely anticipating being short still, given the decrease in the revenue forecast. We think we'd be in a better place to enter into potential negotiations should those be needed. So that's what we're planning on doing. We wanted to present that to y'all to be transparent about the direction that we were taking and see if y'all had any questions beyond that. Yes, Blue.
Is there any sort of estimated timeline for when we might be able to hear back from grantees? And I just want to also say, I recognize that we're asking a lot of them already and we're adding something additional. So just like a realistic maybe window of when we would have that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And actually, we talked about that just a day or two ago. One of the other things, so I don't know, a couple months ago when we were originally talking with y'all about doing these 18-month extensions, we put forward a timeline associated with that. And that timeline actually had us in a place where towards the end of March, we had everything all buttoned up and we would start looking for signatures to try and be complete for the extensions by the end of June. Obviously, we're not going to end up hitting those timelines. And we really had bounced a number of different ideas around internally to bring back to y'all as a recommendation for moving forward. And we haven't set the timelines for this yet, although, you know, if I had to put a rough estimate in terms of doing these surveys, I would say our goal is to probably get them out next week, early next week, and give folks, I don't know, 3-4 weeks or so to respond, you know, and go back and forth with questions just in case they had. And we really felt this was the best approach because it gives the entities that have started these actual services an opportunity to provide us with feedback rather than us making guesses on them. So yeah, we're just asking them for additional information, but in this particular case, we feel like it's really worth the bang for the buck. Ron? And before, I'm sorry, Ron, but Blue, we will also be coming back with an actual detailed schedule about how we think things will play out given this approach. Sorry, Ron.
Thank you. I'm just trying to remember the actual timeline on the when we decided to do extensions. We sent out a letter to all the providers saying, if you wish to extend, let us know. My understanding is the vast majority of providers were interested in extending and wanted the extension. I'm not sure that I know of any organization that doesn't. My question was, when that initial letter went out, that was kind of proposed at the funding level at that time. And
right.
So my question is about the letter that's going out now. Is the letter going to be about how do you continue to propose kind of what your need would be at the current funding level, or is it going to be talking about reduced funding level in the letter?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we've kind of batted that back and forth a little bit. I think it's understood. And if it's not, we will be clear that obviously the overall dollars available for funding the burns has decreased. We are not planning on at this time setting any kind of parameters though for the information that we get back from the providers, because we want to hear a true response from them in terms of what they feel like they need in order to continue services at a minimum level and tally that up it may well be that it comes back and it's well above the $140 million or so that we have available to us. And we would obviously have to enter into negotiations with them, but we could also use that information for other purposes in terms of going forward. So yeah, originally when we did that survey and asked them whether or not they wanted to continue, it was based off of the higher estimates at the time of the forecast. And yes, people were interested. So it's definitely a possibility that some of them might change their mind, but we want to keep the discussion open and real with them and hear back and be able to potentially work with that information.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that response.
Yep. Hey, Caroline.
Hi, John. So I'm trying to figure out the fiscal year here. So this is a 22-23, but I thought we extended it to December, what, 31, 2023?
It would go through the 18th. So the current agreements run through December of 2023. The extension that we're currently have on the table is for 18 months. So it would run through June of 2025.
Okay, so the 24 will be January 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025.
Right.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions concerned with this approach? Yes, Ron.
Oh, you mentioned in your remarks that if organizations potentially had unspent funds. My question would be, how would OHA approach the idea of organizations being able to spend down those funds in the next cycle if they had funds remaining for the extension?
And by the next cycle, you mean
let's say organizations haven't spent down their current burn funding by the time that they get because I understand there are a lot of organizations that have they've had difficulty hiring. They're still doing construction. They haven't opened up their facilities are still coming online. They're still hiring people, and that they have funds that are unspent. Right. If they have funds remaining in their budgets, how are those funds treated? Would they be able to get no cost extensions to be able to continue to use those funds, or those funds, would they be able to reserve those funds? They're not going to be able to, your OHA won't have like a position of clawing back funds from organizations that have excess funds remaining. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, that is correct. I mean, if we were truly ending these grants in December of 2023 and they had funds left over, then we would be in a situation where we were potentially working with them to do settlement and get those back. But with the extension, that essentially makes the grant agreement a 36-month agreement. So they would have until the end of the new date, it's June of 2025, to spend those dollars.
Thank you. Perfect answer. I appreciate that.
Well, thanks. Hey, Kristen, you have a question for me?
I have a question for you. I just want to piggyback on all of this, is that this is all still proposed and subject to final approval. So for any burn partners out there, your grant agreements still end the end of December. They have not been extended yet. And all of this is subject to final approval.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Kristen. Just like we did with the with the current set of agreements, once we went through the process and landed on funding amounts and did the planned on 18-month extension, that information will be brought back to this council through some process to be decided at this point, where ultimately y'all would end up being the ones to approve the extension and the budgetary changes. Yes, Amy.
What about, like, I understand about the extension, but that's quite a bit of extension. So how are we going to be able to track or monitor in some way compliance to the rules and things that were set in place, that the burns are doing what they're supposed to be doing throughout the whole term?
Yeah, so with the extension, it includes information about continued reporting and milestones that each of the grantees has. And that information, as it became available, would be brought back to the council.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Ron.
No, I was just going to add to Amy's point that the council had actually included compliance, that organizations would need to be in compliance with their financial performance, and they need to be in compliance in terms of the extensions going forward. The thing I'm puzzled about is because we've already approved the extensions, I'm not sure that, curious as to why it would need to come back to the council.
Well, what you approved is the concept of doing extensions. And I suppose we can go back and talk about that with our DOJ partners as to whether or not your broad approval like that is satisfactory. I suspect, though, that what we would need to do is bring the information back under a formal vote for the actual entities that are getting the extension and have that addressed that way. But I don't know if Allison or Shannon would want to comment on that now, but that's my understanding.
Yeah. Hi, Ron. Shannon O'Fallon from DOJ. I was just going to look back and see what the motion is, but my recollection is what John explained. You approved sort of the concept of grant extensions versus some other form of, going back out for an RFGA or something like that. But not actually the extensions for particular grantees themselves.
Thanks, Shannon. Caroline?
So this is a forecast revenue. Is there going to be another more accurate revenue, I guess, at a future date? I mean, because something could switch, or is this what we're going with?
I hesitate using the word accurate because we don't make qualifications on the forecast. And I'm sorry, my dog barking in the background. But yes, there will be another forecast. I believe it's towards the end of June, beginning of July, which will help us solidify how much money we have available for those next 18 months.
So then we technically have a little time. I mean, I don't want to rush into, let's start voting on things when things could change in the next few months. I mean, I hate for us to start talking about extension when Measure 110 is still kind of up in the air at the legislative. I mean, if they start saying, well, you can't spend the money. I mean, I don't want it to hurt us. I think I would prefer to wait before we start making some voting on extensions at this time.
Yeah, that's a good point, Caroline. As I mentioned earlier, staff will be getting a timeline back out to you all. I am almost 99% sure that any kind of votes, by the time we get to any kind of votes, it would be past that forecast and past the end of for that matter, the current period of legislation going on. So we should have all that in the rear view mirror and have it as context for any votes that end up occurring. This is still, what we're talking about here is getting us to that point, and so that we can actually have good information decisions that the legislature may or may not make, and also that updated forecast before the votes actually end up occurring about the extensions. Yes, Blue.
I was just curious, and you may not have this answer. If I'm guessing that I don't know if it's 263 or 300 million, but that was all based on forecasts as well. If I remember, or maybe there was some deposited, but did it end up being about that? Did we end up getting less tax revenue than the forecast, or more? Is there anything rolling over?
Yeah, so that 265 million that we had available for the burns, and there was more dollars than that. Some of the dollars obviously went towards admin costs and went towards the tribal set aside and some other things. But the 265 that we had available for the burns was based on a forecast. And subsequent forecast after we had moved forward on that, that's when we started to see some of this, the decrease. Luckily, we had money that was carried over from the previous biennium, and we will also still have money that's going to be carried over somewhat from the previous, from this biennium to the next, that's supporting and allowing us to spend potentially 140 million on the burns. But yeah, and that's the way it works for most all of our most all the spending at the state. It's based on forecast, and we make estimates, and sometimes the estimates that come from the forecasters are true, sometimes they decrease, and sometimes they actually increase, and we end up having
Does anybody know Jonathan's iPad password?
And we end up having to make adjustments, and I think that's just what you're seeing. This is admittedly a pretty big change in the forecast, but it is what we end up having to work with, and y'all end up having to work with. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, we will proceed with this direction and come back maybe probably by the next meeting and give you a firmer set of timelines on when we expect the survey to be done and all the next steps that would need to occur, and we'll go from there.
Awesome, thank you, John. So I am going to pass it over to, I believe, Lake County. Oh no, Jessica's called for a conflict of interest. So I'm gonna pass it over to Jessica. Thank you.
Thanks, Blue. We're gonna get this together. All right. So first off, thanks everybody. The next presentation, as Blue mentioned, is going to be from Lake County. First, we're gonna call for conflicts of interest. If anyone would like to declare a conflict of interest for Lake County, please do so now by raising your hand. Hi, Zeb.
Yeah, you pour it outside, or you can pour it down the toilet.
Hi, Zeb.
Hi, how's it going? Yeah, after talking to the commission yesterday, I'll just, to be safe, I'm gonna say I have a potential conflict of interest on this because of my being a part owner of Phoenix Wellness Center. So I have to declare that.
Okay, thank you for declaring that potential conflict of interest, Zeb. You can go ahead and leave your camera on if you choose. All right. Anyone else who would like to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest? Ron Williams.
No, I just wanted to clarify in my mind that this conversation is related to the Lake County funding proposal. That's what we're about to discuss.
Yeah, they're requesting a change.
The sink or the bathtub.
They're requesting a change, and so
Right.
that.
So this is about Lake County.
It is.
Okay, great. Thanks. I just wanted to make sure I heard.
Yeah, no worries. Anyone else?
I have a question. If I was looking for the hand raising thing.
No worries, Jackie.
Thank you. It kind of a follow-up to what Ron was asking. Would this change the amount of money available to other places? If so, there could be a potential conflict for us.
This
If
is
it's-
not, a vote in the affirmative or the negative will not change funding for any other organizations. This is simply a budgetary change within the Lake County budget.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that helps. And I hope
Does it?
Yeah,
Made sense. No, I don't have a conflict. Thank you.
perfect. And I hope all right, I hope I helped there. And I don't see anyone else with a hand up. So with that, I will pass it over to our friends at Lake County.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to talk with you. My name is Charlie Twait. I'm the CEO of Lake Health District. Lake Health District contracted several years ago with the county to take on the CMHP. So we are the CMHP for Lake County, even though Lake Health District is located predominantly in southern part of the county. So we have a responsibility as part of our mental health services to cover the entire county. We originally applied for more money than we got, but we're very thankful for the $1.2 million that we were awarded. Our original budget, when we developed it, was for a significantly larger amount, and our staff had some great ideas on how we could expand the services that we are currently delivering. As we understood it, we did provide you with a presentation. Thank you. We, as responsible for providing SUD services as well as other mental health services, we have a staff that we keep adding to and trying to expand. Like everyone else, it's hard to find people that want to work in our field. But if you want to go to the second, thank you, second screen. What we originally submitted and then revised based on the smaller numbers was we had a significant portion of money for personnel and a lesser amount for capital. What we have found is that we need to make a change. When we took over from the county was unable to provide locations for mental health and substance use disorder in the southern part of the county. And so it was in a very marginal location. We're in a building that had been a Pacific Power building, didn't have adequate soundproofing, needed a whole lot of work. We fixed that building up. And then we moved our children to another building. They are, so they were not housed where other adults are. That was or not housed where they're treated as on an outpatient basis. And we bought another building for the purpose of, because we just had no space. And so unfortunately we separate SUD from mental health. That's on the southern part of the county. On the northern part in Christmas Valley, we lease space from the county to provide that service, as well as from the North Lake Health District, where we can provide counseling services. Because of the nature of a burn program, we need to find a location. None of the places that we currently have will work. So we looked at all the buildings we could possibly conceivably use and have found a couple. Keep in mind that in remote rural Oregon, there aren't a lot of buildings that don't need a lot of work. Every single building we looked at either needed a new roof or needed a lot of repairs. And so what we find is, of the buildings, that's why we have moved money from personnel and moved that to the capital outlay. As you can see, it is a significant portion of the $1.2 million. Now, in order to deliver service, and of course, that's the key part, we're currently providing that service out of, we converted one of our buildings, had an apartment, and we are now providing a safe, sober environment where SUD clients can meet and be in a safe environment. That's been going on since the latter part of December, first part of January. We can only see 2-3 people at any given time just because of the space limitations. What we need to do is very quickly find another location. We're not asking for money for the future. And I know you have a lot of concerns about how is the state going to allocate future amounts. We want to stay within our budget. It's now March. If we don't get moving, we'll have a hard time spending this money in an appropriate fashion by December 31st. And I hope that I don't have to come to you and appeal for a modification. We want to get after this. We think we can. Because we are responsible as the CMHP, the health district is actively hiring as many people as we possibly can to provide that service. That's why we are able to provide that service through our current CCO contract and through what the state pays the county. We are not in a position where we would be double dipping, asking for money from this burn grant that would pay us again for services that we're already getting paid for. So that's why we think it's very appropriate that we could split that. If you go to the next slide, please. And I'll try to speak quickly, and I see that I have a question, but I know your time is limited. Yes, we're talking about a significant increase in capital. But if we can acquire the facility that we think is ready to be acquired, they've said they are interested. We've come close to. I negotiated a deal in December. It's March. I may lose the deal, so I may have to go back to the drawing board. But I have Plan B and Plan C. If we can get the facility that we're considering, we would be able to relocate some of our other current mental health services, thereby reducing some of our rent that we're paying out of our CCO dollars that we're currently getting. Those reductions, and you can see the dollars, are about $250,000. So that's a significant amount. When we say we are going to eliminate staff costs, that's just because we are already getting the dollars. I have a drawing on the next one of where we are currently providing our burn service. You can see that's a little apartment. We separate things out. We have a backyard that right now we've got 2 feet of snow, so we're not asking anyone to go out into that. But we could have barbecues and that kind of thing. And the bedrooms are not really bedrooms. They're made into meeting space. So we've moved furniture so that we can provide that service. We anticipate once we get the roughly 150 SUD clients that are currently under service. We can't put them all in one location, but we can get a lot of people into our new location. One of the things we plan on doing is providing them skill training for other kinds of services. We've looked at each of the facilities we've looked at, we would consider putting in the form of a commercial kitchen. We've also looked at what we struggle with is we have one laundromat in Lake County. I know it's hard to imagine, but one laundromat. And most of the time it's destroyed by people because it doesn't work right. If we can work out a deal, we would have SUD clients serving as in workforce, managing either food service or in our circumstance, laundry service. So we have some plans on what we would do, not only to provide a safe place for people to congregate, work on their computer skills, work on retraining, but then also jobs that they might be able to take on and then rebuild their lives. I would be happy to answer questions. How would you like me to? Can I answer any questions?
I can call on folks, Sabrina, and then Ron is after Sabrina.
Okay, thank you very much, Blue. I was wondering if we can go back to the budget sheet a couple of slides back. Yes, this one. So I was wondering where you're getting those extra funds to provide for your personnel and the staff training. If I heard you correctly, that's going to be coming from a CCO. I have two questions, by the way. Are they going to allow you to utilize the paid positions and your paid staff to operate in a manner that's in alignment with how the oversight and accountability wants each county to run their burn organizations?
The answer is absolutely. Gobi is the contractor for Eastern Oregon CCO, and they expect that we will deliver this service. It's our obligation. So yes, we will be doing that.
So exactly in alignment with, I'm kind of stunned and surprised and happy at the same time that a CCO would allow you guys to use their funds to provide staff in that manner. That's exactly in alignment with Chapter 944. So, but my other question is, did you already know that you were going to be able to utilize those funds prior, or is that something that just developed over time?
What the CCO has continually asked us to do is to deliver as much care as we possibly can. Much of the burn recipients would qualify as being Medicaid recipients. And so it dovetails perfectly with the needs of the CCO, our needs to provide service to the community, and the clients that we could potentially see and serve through this burn grant. So it dovetails perfectly.
So that's something that just came out after you guys realized that you guys needed this other building. Is that correct? And the CCO said, okay, we'll step in, and I'm just trying to wrap my mind around it. Then we'll go ahead and pay for the staff so that way you guys can get the capital outlay for the building that you need. Is that correct?
That's a great way of describing it. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my question is kind of related. My question is a little bit related because I was looking back at the Lake County matrix in terms of what we approved, and I was looking at the fact that peer support and mentoring and harm reduction intervention, supported employment. So all of those elements for staff are going to be paid for by Gobi. Is that what you're saying?
It's partially paid for by Gobi. It's partially paid for the county obligation. They contract with the health district to deliver that service. And if there's a shortfall, then the health district would pick up the tab on that.
Seems pretty innovative to braid that funding together like that. Okay.
Well, our goal is to deliver the care that the community needs. There aren't any other independent mental health practitioners in the county. The school has some therapists that are providing some therapy to kids, and they continue to look to try and expand that, but we still have that as part of our CMHP responsibility. So we work with the school schools, because there are several, where we can, but we are still the only mental health practitioner in the entire county. I know it's hard to imagine, but that's the reality.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Henry?
Yeah, I just really want to express my appreciation for the representative from Lake County coming to talk with us. You know, I know that some of you will remember Karen Wheeler, who is, I believe, still the chief executive of Gobi. She is. So it makes sense that they would want to focus services to be in alignment with the spirit of, you know, the work that we're doing here on the OAC. I also want to just make a statement that, you know, having worked with different CCOs within Oregon and, you know, county mental health offices, that my experience is that they're you know, they are required to, and many of their mission statements are clear about providing services to the whole community that aren't, you know, in any way, what's the word, discriminatory. So I think that you know, those entities have always sought to provide the services that we're seeking to provide here. That's just been my lived experience working for those organizations. Thank you.
Thanks, Henry. Caroline, you're next.
Thank you, Charlie. When I was working for the state, I spent many hours in the eastern counties. And I'm with the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs, and we're definitely in rural community. So I applaud you in terms of your thought process, because with the reduction of Measure 110 that we're already aware of, we have not completed the legislative year yet. So we don't know, there's some unknowns with Measure 110. I think it's wise for many of our programs to focus on the infrastructure, because if there is a reduction of dollars, which there is going to be, then we didn't put all our money, I guess, into staff. By putting monies into the infrastructure, we're going to have those for years to come. And we could use the reduced dollars now to do the operations, to do the supplies, to do the funding, the staffing. So I personally feel like that this is a wise move on your part, as long as you're not jeopardizing the intent of Burns, which I think you already said that you're still going to meet the standards of Burns. And so I think this is, in my opinion, a good proposal.
Thank you. I will say, Caroline, that this focuses predominantly on Southern Lake County. It does not focus as much on North Lake as I'd like. My commitment to both this organization and to our community is, as we get established, we've got to expand and include areas in the entire county. That is our responsibility. Challenge that we have is, as many of you know, in rural Oregon, we have very few facilities that can accommodate this kind of service. And we do need to put the investment there. I would hire as many staff as I could, if I could hire them and they wanted to live in rural Lake County. It's hard to find people that want to live here. But thank you for your question.
Did you have any follow-up, Caroline? Or?
No, I'm in agreement with him. I mean, Lakeview is gigantic. And I do know when you hire staff, I know when I oversaw the prevention unit, you had one prevention coordinator who it took all day to get to one extreme of the county to the other extreme. So they would go to like a 2-hour meeting, but it still took them all day to get there and to get back. So I definitely see the challenge with, especially Lake County being so huge. So I don't really have a follow-up, just confirm with what Charlie is saying.
Awesome, thank you. So I have 2 questions. And sometimes I will forget the other one, so I will ask you one at a time. I'm just curious. I know that Measure 110 has really looked to fund services, some services that are maybe not traditionally funded or billable through Medicaid. So the couple of things I'm thinking of is harm reduction or syringe services, and also peer support, because it's my understanding that peer support, you can only get reimbursement if people are on the pathway to treatment versus people who are maybe recovery curious. And so I'm just wondering now that there isn't a budget for personnel, if there's still a way to deliver some of those services. I'm also just looking at the supply budget being cut, and I don't know if that's harm reduction supplies or other supplies, but that'd be my only other concern.
Thank you very much for your question. There's a couple things. Actually, if I could hire more peer support folks, I would do it tomorrow. My biggest problem, and this is a problem statewide that we're going to face, is as a health district, I have to run everyone through the criminal background check. And for many of the folks that we are going to deal with, if we want to hire them, I can't get through that system. So I have to figure a way to hire them. They're people that we want to get employed. We want them to get back on a road of recovery, not just trying to stay sober, but to rebuild their lives and do it in such a fashion that we can hire them and try to deal with the criminal background check. So it's a concern, but I would hire them tomorrow if I could. In terms of the reduction in services and supplies, we think that those supplies that we will be needing will be for the specific burn clients. So we think we're more measured on how we're looking at that. It's not a reduction just because of overall spending. We at one time thought we would buy a vehicle, for example, and yes, it's a huge distance. When I talk a huge distance, it's 100 miles from one end of Lakeview to Christmas Valley, and then another 60 miles to La Pine. And they're huge distances. So we were going to buy a van. We think we'll spend our money better on facilities and find another way to buy a van. That's the reason why we've had that reduction. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat. So I guess I'm just curious if you're going to be able to provide peer support to people who are not interested in treatment, since I think you said you're going to be billing for a lot of these services.
So a lot of our billing for peer support is encounter because we're being paid by the CCO. They're paying us on a capitation, which means it doesn't matter how many times I bill it. It's more important how much I make it available. If I hire somebody and they can't do enough peer support because they can't find the clients, I still pay them. The encounter is not as important. In terms of finding clients finding individuals that are not yet clients, excellent question. If we think that we have roughly 150 people that are receiving care right now, do we think there's more than that that are that could use our services? Our hope is that by having an attractive place for people to gather in a reasonable, safe environment, that we will engage people that could benefit from being in service.
Okay, so this is sort of looking to sustain whatever was happening before you got this burn grant. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We've not spent any of the money, virtually none of the money on the burn grant because we haven't got an approved budget. So we're spending the money that is from the health district, from the CCO, from the county. We're spending that and delivering this service. We have not spent the burn grant dollars. And we're anxious to do that.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, Zeb, you're up next.
Hi, thank you. And this is just, I got two things. And the first thing is just kind of follow up on what other people have been talking about in the spirit of Measure 110. Just want to make sure that if an individual has no form of payment, they don't meet the criteria for the CCO, will they be turned away for lack of payment source?
The perfect example in that case, Zeb, is veterans. Most of the time we don't get paid for veteran services and we continue to deliver veteran services. Number one, we are a health district. So it is our obligation as the health district to provide service to our community. Number two, when we contracted with the county to deliver mental health services, that falls within our responsibility. So yes, we will deliver as much service as we can. Again, I want to emphasize that if we could deliver service to anybody, we will. As an example, we took over from the county, the public health service. Public health service, as you may or may not know, we provide some gynecological services for averting pregnancy. Oftentimes, those are undocumented individuals. We don't get paid for that. That is still part of our responsibility. And we encourage, not just offer that, we encourage people to come in and get care.
That's great. Thank you for that. And then the other part was, could you just, you mentioned it previously, but could you just repeat your other sources of funds to be able to provide the services that you guys are providing?
Sure. Number one, we are contracted with Eastern Oregon CCO, and through that Gobi, and as Henry said, that Gobi is run by the CEO being Karen Wheeler. So we have funds from our CCO. Two, the state pays to the county for mental health services, and we are recipients of those monies. Thirdly, we are a health district, so as a critical access hospital, if we deliver mental health services in our clinic or any of our facilities, we are reimbursed for those kinds of services through whether Medicare or again through the state. So we have a variety of different ways that we have access to funds. Now, we are not brimming with money, trust me, but we try to access as many sources as we possibly can to deliver that service. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.
Okay, and then Sabrina is next, and I see Caroline with a hand up after that.
Okay, one last question. I just wanted to clarify that I heard you correctly. So nobody will be turned away for lack of payment or lack of insurance. And I do like the fact that you said even undocumented people or veterans or people that aren't on insurance, if need be, can still receive services in spirit of Measure 110. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I must say that on veterans, sometimes what we will do is encourage the veterans to access care that is paid for them. It's important because of continuity. It's important because they might have out of pocket. There are other reasons. So it's not that we'll turn them away. What we will do is do all that we can to get them the best care that's paid for in the most appropriate way. That doesn't mean we turn them away, but we may redirect them. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Sabrina. Caroline?
I think one of the things that might be a little bit different with our rural communities is the fact that we learn how to, I think, utilize the dollars that are coming in and to maximize them. And so we tend to do a lot of, I think, sharing the dollars and filling in the gaps, because over the years in a lot of our rural communities, there's never been sufficient dollars. And I know there's never been sufficient dollars for substance use disorder for eons, for years. And so I don't think we need to debate that issue. I think in rural counties, though, we tend to gather all the different agencies together, and we tend to do more of a comprehensive approach. And I think that's what Gobi has done, because gosh, I can't believe it was a year ago when we were still all reading proposals. And I had several of the rural counties that were connected with Gobi. And I was just, totally impressed in terms of how each county would help another county. One county would have services that another county wouldn't have. And so they would share those resources because of the lack of resources. So it always impresses me, I think, in Eastern Oregon and some of the counties in terms of how they collaborate with each other. So again, I think, I don't know if we're ready to do, if all the questions are done, we're ready to make a recommendation to accept this or not. Are we there yet?
Onisha has a hand up, but I think we are getting closer.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah, I want to make a move to approve their budget revision. I don't know if I'm saying it right. It sounds like we are really privileged, and they have a lot of things that they overcome, and they sound like they're doing amazing, and they have a lot of barriers they face every day. And I want to make a motion to approve their.
I second it.
All right, so we have a motion on the table from Onisha to approve the budget revision. And who is that a second from?
Dharma, sorry.
Hubert.
Oh, that was a second from Dharma.
Oh, okay.
Any more discussion? Here, oh, Zeb?
Yeah, just one comment. Just like to say, great presentation. Great job of presenting the information and answering all our questions. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, any more discussion? Hearing none. Sydney?
Hey, the motion to approve the budget revision. Amy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Blue?
Yes.
You, Carlos?
Yes.
Thank you, Dharma?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Caroline.
Yes.
Thank you, Caroline. Henry?
Yes.
Thank you, Hubert.
Yes.
Thank you, Jackie.
Yes.
Thank you. Has Lakeisha joined? I don't see her. Okay. Leticia?
Yes.
Thank you. Melinda?
Yes.
You, Morgan?
Yes.
Thank you. Onisha?
Yes.
Thank you. Is Nicole still here? I had her grayed out earlier, but.
Yeah. Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Hey, Nicole, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Ron?
Yes.
Thank you. And Sabrina?
Yes.
Thank you. And Zeb, would you like to vote?
Yes.
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 All right. That passes with 16 yes votes.
Thank you all very much. If we have any other questions, we'd love to answer them for you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. That was a really thorough presentation. Appreciate it. Okay, so next up, there's going to be a legislative work group update, and I am actually not sure if all of the folks are going to be chiming in or just one of them, so I will turn it over to whoever wants to start it off.
I think we have Onisha and Ron who are taking part in the update. So Onisha or Ron, you want to give an update, or do you both?
Hopefully my audio is working okay. So there was a lot of very heated opinions about some of the burn work. Some of the things that really stuck out were the worker types. They really are adamant about changing the language so that the worker type language includes mental health peers, so that they're not discriminated from ability to be funded through Measure 110. We're still in conversation about how that's going to be done. There was some discussion about primary prevention. There was some agreement in the meeting that harm reduction isn't considered primary prevention. There was some heavy debate on both sides on whether Measure 110 monies should be used for primary prevention. And that main focus would be focused toward people who haven't been touched by addiction or substance use yet, but to educate them about the harms or potential harms for substance use, and really defining what primary prevention means. Should it live within Measure 110? Is there a power imbalance versus rural burns, like what the gentleman was just talking about, how he has to travel 100 miles to get from one place to another? Is there a power dynamic for burns in that area and their ability and feasibility to meet with each other versus like Multnomah County burn? We meet in person once a month. We have weekly Slack communication, and rural areas don't have that. What are we going to do about that? They want us to be more organized with not only the burns amongst themselves, but what each county offers and how OAC can be proactive in making sure all of Oregon is aware of that. And what are the gaps? Are there any gaps? What are we planning on doing to fill the gaps? And should we create MOUs between all the burn partners? Which was heatedly debated on both sides. Some people thought we should, and some people thought that would be excessive paperwork. So it was a very interesting meeting. Representative Knauss is very invested in what me and Ron had to say. And a lot of this stuff, no like decisions were made, but a lot of people were just sharing their heartfelt experience and opinions about it. And I'll let Ron add his thoughts as well.
Yeah, thank you, Onisha. Kind of what I would say about how this group is kind of functioning. It's Representative Knowles has convened a group of folks who are with the intent of making improvements and clarifying some of the policies related, clarifying the statute as it relates to ballot measure 110 and the burns. And so the discussion last week was primarily, it kind of moved in a number of different places, but it was primarily about postponing the Secretary of State audit for a year, talking about prevention, adding prevention. Should prevention be funded by ballot measure 110? There was concern that dual diagnosis or co-occurring disorders weren't part of the burn services. I read through the rules to show that it's actually in our rules. Co-occurring disorders and referrals for people that have that is actually in the rules that we actually, so that's clarified. And the big conversation was mentioned by Onisha, was whether or not it should be required that burns coordinate with the local mental health authority and community mental health programs. So that was the majority of the conversation. I think the temperature in the room about that was that's not necessary, but there were still a lot of strong opinions about it, and so it's going to be on the agenda again tomorrow to kind of clarify that. I had pointed out that what was missing in the room, there are a lot of kind of high-level professional program people in the room, and what I was saying is what's missing in this conversation is lived experience, because when we talked about it as a council, we were sharing our lived experience and kind of what it was like on the ground in these communities where some of these local mental health authorities and community mental health programs weren't necessarily fun to deal with or positive to deal with, particularly for people of color. So tomorrow they're going to kind of return to that conversation around whether or not the burn should coordinate with the local mental health authorities. They want to return to the conversation. They're going to have a conversation about whether or not to clarify low barrier treatment versus residential inpatient type treatment. There's a conversation where they want to talk about developing an appeal process for folks who are denied burn application. And then they also want to return to or have a conversation regarding increasing the size of the OAC to include a community mental health program or other type of provider, and increase the diversity of the OAC. And I'm a little surprised by that, because from my perspective, the OAC might be the most diverse public body in the entire state of Oregon. So anyway, that's kind of a recap.
I have a couple questions, but I just want to first thank both of you, Onisha and Ron. That was really helpful. I have not been really kept up to date other than that. And it would also, I think, I'd like to see more of these updates as it progresses, because it's just really helpful to know what's happening. I was curious if there's anyone who's maybe from the state opioid board or familiar with the settlement, because I am like 95% sure that prevention was one of the areas that could be funded through the state opioid settlement. And I don't know if there's anyone there to sort of speak to maybe ways to align with that as well.
Question, Blue, and that was brought up about prevention being an important thing. It needs to be funded, but with Measure 110 money being stretched so thin, majority of the room felt it shouldn't be funded there. Like there was like a 85% consensus that it shouldn't be funded through Measure 110 funding. And they brought up a variety of solutions. They talked about the public health, administrative. They talked about, I think they said something about like education.
And federal funding. And
Yeah, they had a variety of ideals, none of them which were solidified, but a lot of people were like, yeah, it needs to be funded, but not here. This money is already stretched really thin. But it still is an ongoing conversation, just to be clear.
I had one follow-up question and then Zeb will be after that. Ron, I'm curious if anyone from DOJ is looking over the parts of the rules that are being discussed, like with the specificity and making sure that the way the rules are written, it is clear enough that everybody's interpreting it correctly. I don't know if that question makes sense. I just want to be sure that.
Well, two things. Well, I mentioned two things. One is that there's no one from DOJ in the room that I'm aware of. And second, that I read verbatim from the rules to the group, what was in the rules regarding co-occurring disorders and the comment that I had back, well, yeah, it's in the rules, but nobody knows that. In the second week of the second week of these meetings, it was also clear to me that 90% of the people in the room had no idea there was such a thing as the 944 rules. And they were distributed, I think, in the third week to people, but people really don't have a sense of them and how they apply to burns.
That's fair. Thank you, Ron. Zeb?
Hi, thanks. And I'm gonna say something that, Ron and Anisha, you guys know this already for sure. I just want to say it out loud. The amazing thing about this council and the Measure 110 and this process has been the ability to get money to the providers, get it on the street to help people. The reason there was any delay at all was the existing bureaucracy that existed, right? And when we first started, OHA did a great job of talking about, systemic oppression and racism in the system. My worry is with all these these other meetings going on, people are looking to add more bureaucracy and more steps to perfect something that is working right now, for the sake of, for the sake of just, airing their thoughts out or whatever. I'm just, want to make sure that we protect, the intent of what this money was for. And I hope that we're not adding more and more steps and more players to this game and trying to make this money for things that it wasn't intended for. Anyway, thank you.
I agree, Zeb, and we made that super clear. And what I found right away in this meeting is like what Ron hit on, there's a lot of people who are like uber professional, that their heart and their passion is in the right place, but they don't have a clear understanding in live life experience, either from a family member or from themselves, about what substance use looks like, especially substance use that you don't want to be in anymore. I'm really careful with my language because I know everybody doesn't look at substance use as a bad thing, but there's a level of substance use for some of us that identify as people in recovery that you don't want to be in anymore, but you're stuck in it. And the people in the room that we were in had a non-clear understanding and no lived experience of what that looks like. So they really have little to no understanding or ideal of what the boots on the ground staff in all of these burns and all of these different counties are facing every day. Like the city, I feel really privileged living in a big city like Portland and hearing that man talk about the rural area where he lives and all the barriers he faced. I can't imagine dealing with what we deal with on a day-to-day basis, and then having to have one laundromat in the town, or having to go 100 miles to travel to see another provider to get care for somebody. And they don't understand that. Like they understand the ideal of it, but they don't know what it really looks like. So it's really hard. And I really feel like more of us should be welcome to these meetings, because I think more personalities, more ethnicities, more representation, more lived experience need to be at these type of meetings, because they're making some really heavy decisions about this Measure 110 money, and they have some really broad ideals about the work that we do here and the work that these burns are actually doing.
Thank you, Onisha. Caroline, you're next, and then Ron, I see your hand after that.
So I'm trying to put the whole picture together, because that's how I think. So I'm a big proponent of prevention. I spend a good portion of my career doing prevention, and I think there's a big danger, and unless people really understand what prevention is and start getting it confused with like low barrier treatment and other, language, then we're going to open up a Pandora box. And that's not where I think we should be going. Does prevention need dollars? Yes. Should it come from Measure 110 when we already are told that they're already going to be reduced? And I think I made it very clear way in the beginning when we first start meeting that I have some huge concerns about leaving the mental health authority out and leaving the local alcohol and drug planning committees out, and for Measure 110 to be kind of all by itself, because to me that creates the danger, and it creates internal fighting with those who already have a system established, and now we have Measure 110 sort of out there by themselves, and they're not going to get the support that they need until people begin to understand that we need one comprehensive plan that includes all these different funding sources, that includes the whole continuum of care, where money that goes to prevention should come from somewhere. Exactly where? I know where it kind of comes from right now. It comes from the block grant. There hasn't been a lot of money being put into prevention, yet prevention is a key component in terms of future, behavioral problems, if prevention is done right. I mean, the reason why we're in the situation where we're at is because folks didn't get that type of solid prevention within their life. So I'm concerned about mixing or trying to say, let's carve out, money with 110. In fact, I made this very clear with several people who contacted me regarding in terms of where can we get more money for prevention. It's not because prevention should not be a priority in this state. It should be. I'm not sure if 110 is where you're going to get those dollars when there's a reduction. But I do think that it's wise for folks who are getting Measure 110, and I think some counties are doing this and other counties are not, for them to include the county commissioners, to include the local alcohol blame committee, and to include the mental health authorities or the community mental health providers, and for them to start working together side by side instead of people trying to just grab the little money that's out there. So I believe in comprehensive approach. The tribes are doing that. We are now, underneath tribal behavioral health, and we're working on one comprehensive plan. Are we there yet? Is it a really, I guess, easy way of doing this? There's always going to be, I think, pains in the beginning when there's some change, but we are putting all our money together so we could see where our gaps are. And our dollars is prevention, treatment, aftercare, mental health promotion, all together. And so the tribes are doing that. I sure hate to leave the counties behind, but the tribes have to do what they have to do. So hopefully in the future, maybe that type of concept could be adopted by the counties, but right now, there's not that type of support. So I just want to add that in, that I'm in agreement with what everyone is saying, but maybe from a different perspective.
I was just going to mention also that the committee staff for Representative Nose and the House Behavioral Health Committee sent out some information regarding prevention that kind of clarifies the prevention world. And I can send that to Jessica, and if she wants to send it out to people. I just also wanted to clarify that just in terms of the conversation about co-occurring disorders, that there's no conversation that says that we should be excluding people, and we shouldn't be excluding people that have a co-occurring disorder. And hopefully this process will move a little more quickly and kind of resolve itself sooner than later. Their meeting scheduled through the 23rd of March. And I think it's around that time that if Representative Notes wants to have an amendment or a bill to bring forward, we'd be able to, it would be around that time we'd probably see it. So that's something that we could take a look at once that happens. That's all.
Thanks, Ron. So that was the 23rd of March?
Yes.
In a couple weeks.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's super helpful. And you would
he may be working on language now, but we'd be able to see it. But the work group is supposed to inform the bill that he's trying to put together. And once that happens and it goes to committee and there's a hearing and then it goes to the floor, there's going to be all kind of shenanigans. So hopefully we can get this resolved very quickly.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments, questions about the work group? Okay. So with that, I am going to pass over to Jessica for some OHA updates.
Thanks so much, Blue. Thanks, Council. I really only have one update, and that is regarding, you all had some questions regarding the letters that we sent out to you. Those answers are going to come to you shortly after this meeting. So once you get those, we will also be sending out a date by which we would like you to return those if you haven't already done so. Although I do want to say a majority of you, or a lot of you, have already returned those. I do have one more update. So equipment update. We are working right now to get to formalize times for the Salem office and the Portland office. Once we get those, we do have a list of folks that need some support in person, and we will get those times out to you. We are really dependent on the schedule of the tech support there and when they can give us some dedicated time. And with that, I think I am done. And I think I just want to say thank you all so much for such a fantastic meeting.